Parental betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound, because it comes from the very people who were supposed to protect, guide, and love unconditionally. When the ones who gave you life turn against you, the world you knew collapses from within. There is no warning, no gradual realization, just a moment when everything you believed about love and family becomes a lie. You start questioning your own worth, wondering what you did wrong, and how the people who once held you close could now look at you with coldness in their eyes. It's a pain that doesn't scream loudly but eats away at your soul quietly, day after day, until you begin to lose yourself. At first, you refuse to believe it. You make excuses for them, convincing yourself that maybe it's a misunderstanding, maybe they're just angry, maybe things will go back to normal. But betrayal doesn't fade, it grows, wrapping itself around your memories and turning them sour. Every kind word begins to sound false, every smile feels rehearsed, and every act of love feels like manipulation. You remember the warmth of your childhood home, the laughter around the table, the comfort of your mother's embrace, your father's promises of protection, and then you realize all of it was conditional. Their love was never about you. It was about control, expectations, and the image they wanted the world to see. The betrayal doesn't always come as a dramatic act. Sometimes it's slow and silent, hidden in moments of neglect, in words that diminish your dreams, in decisions made without your voice. It could be choosing others over you, selling your trust for money, or spreading lies to destroy your reputation. Sometimes it's as cruel as turning you away when you needed them most, making you feel like an outsider in your own home. And sometimes, it's simply their silence when you cried for help, their absence when you begged to be seen. That silence echoes louder than any shout. It tells you exactly where you stand, invisible, replaceable. You start carrying the weight of their betrayal everywhere you go. It shapes how you see people, how you trust, how you love. You begin to doubt kindness, suspect sincerity, and guard your heart even from those who mean no harm. You build walls because the people who should have been your shelter turned into your storm. Every memory becomes a battlefield between love and pain, where you can't tell which side to stand on. You hate them for what they did, but part of you still longs for their approval, for that impossible moment when they would admit their mistake and tell you that you mattered. Betrayal from parents is different from any other heartbreak because it takes away your foundation. It's not just emotional, it's spiritual. It shatters your identity, your sense of safety, your belief in goodness. You're left to rebuild yourself from the ruins, trying to fill the emptiness they left behind. The hardest part isn't surviving their actions, it's surviving the memories. You can't erase the years when you believed they loved you, and that knowledge haunts you. How could they pretend so well? How could they smile while lying? How could they watch you break and do nothing? Those questions replay endlessly in your mind, keeping the wounds open. Sometimes, their betrayal is driven by greed, money, inheritance, social image. Sometimes it's jealousy, resentment of your success, or the fear of losing control over you. They might manipulate you with guilt, reminding you of what they've done for you, twisting love into debt. They make you feel that you owe them everything, even your pain. And when you finally try to stand up for yourself, they call it disrespect, ingratitude, rebellion. They paint themselves as victims while you're left as the ungrateful child who dared to seek freedom. The world might even believe them, because society refuses to see parents as villains. But you know the truth, behind closed doors, the people everyone admired became your worst enemies. You learn that blood doesn't always mean loyalty. You realize that being a parent doesn't automatically make someone loving or kind. Some people give birth to children they were never meant to nurture. Some see their children as tools, not as souls. And when those people happen to be your parents, the betrayal hits harder than anything else. It's not just losing love, it's losing your definition of love. You start from zero, not knowing what genuine care even feels like, because what you thought was love was actually manipulation dressed as affection. In that emptiness, you begin to see how much power they had over you, and how much of it they misused. You think about all the choices they made for you, all the ways they silenced you, all the times they forced you to sacrifice your happiness for their comfort. You remember the guilt they planted in you, the way they made you believe that standing up for yourself was wrong. It takes years to unlearn that. It takes strength to admit that your pain came from the people who were supposed to protect you. It takes courage to stop defending them in your mind, to finally say, "They hurt me," without making excuses for them. And yet, no matter how far you go, a part of you still aches for them. Because deep down, the child in you still wants their love. That's the cruelest part of parental betrayal. You can't fully hate them without hurting yourself. You can't erase them without erasing a part of your own story. So you carry that conflict, trying to move forward while a piece of your heart stays trapped in the past, waiting for a love that will never return. The struggle that follows parental betrayal is not just about surviving what they did to you, it's about surviving yourself. The confusion, the grief, and the anger begin to blend into something heavier than words can hold. When your own parents turn against you, they don't just take away your trust, they take away your sense of belonging. You wake up one day feeling like The struggle doesn't begin the moment they betray you, it starts long before, in the little moments when you felt unseen. The times when you spoke, and no one listened. The times when you cried, and they told you to be quiet. The times when you tried to make them proud, only to be told it wasn't good enough. Those moments pile up until they become a mountain of pain, and when betrayal finally comes, it's like an avalanche burying you beneath everything you once ignored. The weight of their actions becomes unbearable, not because of what they did now, but because you finally see every moment they made you feel small and realize it was all leading to this. You begin to fight with yourself. Part of you wants to hate them, while another part still longs for their love. You replay memories, trying to understand if there was something you could have done differently, something that could have made them stay, support you, or be proud of you. You start blaming yourself for their mistakes, because that's what they trained you to do. They made you believe that love must be earned, that their happiness depended on your obedience. And even after they betray you, that conditioning doesn't vanish. It lives in you, whispering that maybe it was your fault, that maybe you deserved it. You carry that guilt like a chain around your neck, too heavy to break, too familiar to remove. Every day feels like walking through a storm. You try to hold yourself together, but the smallest reminder tears you apart. Seeing other families laugh together feels like a cruel reminder of what you've lost. You look at mothers comforting their children, fathers protecting their daughters, and you wonder why you couldn't have that. Why your story had to be different. You start to build walls around your heart, not out of strength, but out of fear. You promise yourself never to be vulnerable again, never to trust too easily, never to let anyone have the power to destroy you the way they did. But even as there are nights when you break down completely. When you sit in the dark and let the tears fall because holding them back hurts even more. You remember every cruel word, every moment they turned away, every time they made you feel small, and you wonder how love could look so much like hate. The world tells you to forgive and move on, but they don't understand what it feels like to be betrayed by the people who were supposed to be your home. Forgiveness feels impossible when the wounds are still bleeding. You can't just forget when every heartbeat carries a memory of their cruelty. The struggle also shows up in how you relate to others. You become careful, guarded, always waiting for people to show their true colors. You push away anyone who gets too close, afraid they'll hurt you too. You test people's loyalty without realizing it, because you can't risk being broken again. And when someone does something kind, you doubt their motives. Love starts to feel like a trick, comfort feels like a trap, and every relationship becomes a test of endurance. You don't mean to live this way, but pain has taught you to expect the worst. It's the only way you know how to survive. Sometimes, the breakdown doesn't look like sadness. It looks like anger, sharp, uncontrollable, bursting out of nowhere. You find yourself furious at the smallest things, because deep down, you're angry at them for taking away your peace. You hate how their actions still control you, how even in their absence, they dictate your emotions. You want to be free from their shadow, but every time you think you've moved on, a memory drags you back. You start questioning your own strength, wondering why it's taking so long to heal. You think healing should be linear, but it's not. It's a cycle of rising and falling, of pretending you're fine and then breaking all over again. There are moments when you lose hope entirely. When you start to believe that maybe this pain is permanent, that maybe you'll never feel whole again. You start living on autopilot, doing what's expected of you but feeling nothing inside. You smile at people, say you're fine, but deep down, you're empty. You wonder if anyone could ever truly understand, if anyone could ever fill the void they left. But even as you drown in that emptiness, something small keeps you going, a stubborn spark that refuses to die. You start to see that survival isn't just about breathing. It's about finding reasons to keep going even when everything inside you wants to stop. You force yourself to get up, to eat, to work, to exist, even when your heart feels shattered. You begin to learn that strength isn't loud or dramatic, it's quiet. It's waking up one more day. It's choosing to keep living even when the people who were supposed to love you have given you every reason not to. You begin to understand that you can't wait for them to fix what they broke. You have to find a way to rebuild yourself from the pieces they left behind. The emotional struggle doesn't disappear with time. Some days it feels lighter, other days it crushes you. But it changes you. It teaches you empathy in ways pain-free people will never know. It teaches you to listen, to see, to feel deeply. It teaches you to find comfort in small things, a kind word, a sunrise, a quiet moment of peace. The world may not know what you carry, but you do. You know the strength it takes to wake up every morning and face the world despite everything. You know the effort it takes to not become what they made you feel. You fight daily battles that no one sees, and that invisible war shapes you more than any victory ever could. The journey of survival after betrayal by your own parents begins in silence. There are no instructions, no roadmap, no helping hand to guide you through the darkness. It's just you and the shattered pieces of a life you once believed in. You wake up every morning feeling the weight of everything you've lost, trust, safety, love, and somehow, you still move. Not because you're strong, but because there's no other choice. The world doesn't stop when your heart breaks, and neither can you. The first step in survival is simply existing, breathing through the pain even when it burns your chest. You keep going, even when you don't know why, because something deep inside refuses to give up completely. The early days of that journey are the hardest. You feel lost, disconnected from everyone around you. The things that once gave you joy feel meaningless, and the faces of others become reminders of what you no longer have. You crave comfort, but trust no one enough to ask for it. You sit in rooms full of people and still feel invisible, as though you're watching life happen from a distance. Every laugh you hear reminds you of how long it's been since you truly smiled. You carry the ache quietly, learning to hide it because no one seems to understand. To them, you're supposed to move on, but how do you move on from the very people who taught you what love was supposed to mean? You start by learning how to survive without affection. You teach yourself how to find warmth in small things, the sun on your skin, the sound of rain, a song that makes you feel less alone. You begin to depend on yourself in ways you never had to before. You become your own protector, your own healer, your own comfort. It's lonely, but it's necessary. You learn to replace their absence with self-sufficiency, and though it doesn't fill the void, it keeps you from falling apart. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come, for understanding that will never be offered, and start building small routine. As time passes, you begin to seek purpose in your pain. You start asking what you can learn from it, what it's trying to teach you. You look at the scars and see that they've made you more aware, more resilient. You notice that you no longer break at small things because you've already survived something that almost destroyed you. Pain becomes your teacher, showing you the strength that you never knew you had. You begin to understand that survival isn't just about moving forward, it's about transforming the pain into something that fuels you. You start to chase independence, success, stability, not out of pride, but as proof to yourself that you can stand on your own. You begin to build a new version of yourself, one that doesn't depend on their approval. You make decisions for yourself, even if they scare you. You try new things, meet new people, take risks that you once avoided because fear no longer holds the same power. You realize that you have nothing left to lose that you haven't already lost. That realization becomes liberating. It pushes you to rebuild your identity from the ground up. You're no longer the child who needed their love, you're the person who survived without it. The more you grow, the more distance you create between who you were and who you're becoming. Still, survival isn't a straight path. There are days when you feel strong and days when you collapse under the weight of it all. You find yourself revisiting the same pain, the same memories, wondering if healing is even real. Some days, it feels like pretending, other days, it feels like progress. You learn that healing isn't forgetting, it's remembering without breaking. You learn to carry your story without shame. You stop hiding your pain as something to be embarrassed about and start seeing it as proof that you endured what would have destroyed others. You start setting boundaries, even when it feels wrong. Saying no becomes a form of self-defense, one that once felt selfish but now feels necessary. You realize that protecting your peace is not cruelty, it's survival. You stop trying to fix people who remind you of your parents. You stop chasing love from those who make you feel unworthy. You begin to recognize red flags sooner, to walk away faster, to trust your instincts instead of silencing them. Every boundary you set becomes a declaration, I deserve better. You may not fully believe it yet, but every step reinforces it until it becomes truth. The journey also teaches you to appreciate solitude. Being alone stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like peace. You learn to enjoy your own company, to find comfort in your own silence. You begin to build a relationship with yourself, one based on understanding and patience. You forgive yourself for the things you did to survive, the overthinking, the isolation, the anger, the silence. You start to see that all those things were not weakness, but defense mechanisms, ways your heart protected itself when no one else would. You start treating yourself with the kindness you always wished to receive. Sometimes, survival means letting go of the dream of having the parents you deserved. It means accepting that they may never apologize, never understand, never change. You stop waiting for closure and start creating it yourself. You write, you speak, you create, you work, you do whatever it takes to turn your pain into something that belongs to you instead of them. You begin to use your story not as a wound, but as a weapon, a way to remind yourself that you are not defined by what they did, but by how you endured it. The further you go on this journey, the more you see that survival is not about forgetting the past, but about refusing to let it control your future. You begin to trust again, cautiously but sincerely. You start to believe that not everyone will hurt you, that there are people capable of genuine love and care. It takes time, but you let yourself open up again, slowly allowing light to enter the spaces that were once filled with darkness. You learn that vulnerability is not weakness, it's the courage to believe in love again despite knowing how much it can hurt. And through it all, you keep moving forward. Not because the pain has disappeared, but because it has become part of you, woven into your story in a way that no longer defines you but strengthens you. The person you were before the betrayal no longer exists, and though that realization hurts, it also brings freedom. You are no longer the broken child waiting for love, you are the survivor who learned how to build it for yourself. Transformation through pain is not a moment that happens suddenly, it's a slow, quiet evolution that begins in the deepest corners of suffering. Pain enters like an unwelcome visitor, shattering everything familiar and leaving nothing but emptiness behind. At first, it feels like destruction, a cruel force that takes everything from you. But over time, you begin to notice that within that destruction lies a strange kind of clarity. The pieces of yourself that once depended on others start to disappear, and what remains is something raw, honest, and unbreakable. Pain strips you down to your core, forcing you to face who you truly are when there is nothing left to hide behind. It exposes your fears, your insecurities, your illusions, and demands that you rebuild yourself without the lies you once lived by. The transformation begins when you stop fighting the pain and start listening to it. Every ache, every tear, every sleepless night becomes a message from the part of you that is still. At first, this transformation feels like isolation. You start to distance yourself from things that once defined you. You no longer fit into old friendships, old patterns, or old roles. The world sees it as withdrawal, but it's actually rebirth. You are no longer willing to shrink yourself just to make others comfortable. The pain has burned away your need for approval. You begin to understand that peace is more valuable than acceptance, and silence more meaningful than noise. You spend more time with yourself, not because you want to, but because you have to. In that solitude, you start piecing yourself back together, learning what it means to exist without depending on validation. Transformation through pain changes your relationship with strength. Before, you might have thought strength meant being tough, pretending everything was fine, or hiding your tears. But pain teaches you that real strength is being honest about your wounds, allowing yourself to feel deeply, and still choosing to rise. It's not about pretending to be unaffected, it's about being broken and moving anyway. You begin to respect yourself more because you see what you've survived. You start to understand that you don't need to prove your worth to anyone, you've already earned it through every battle you fought alone. The way you see the world begins to shift. The same pain that once made everything look dark starts to illuminate truth in unexpected places. You find beauty in resilience, meaning in struggle, and value in imperfection. You begin to see pain not as punishment, but as a force that shapes you into someone wiser and more compassionate. You start noticing people who carry their own silent battles, and instead of judging them, you feel connected. Your empathy deepens, not out of pity, but out of understanding. You know what it's like to fall apart, and that knowledge makes you softer, but also stronger. Transformation through pain often feels lonely because few can understand the process. The world praises quick healing and easy smiles, but your growth happens slowly, invisibly, in moments when no one is watching. It's in the nights you cried and still showed up the next day. It's in the moments you wanted to give up but didn't. No one claps for that kind of strength, but it's the foundation of who you're becoming. You realize that healing is not about becoming who you were before, it's about becoming someone new, someone who can never be broken the same way again. As you change, you start to let go of things that no longer serve you. You release old expectations, toxic attachments, and the endless need to be understood. Pain teaches you to accept that not everyone will see your worth, and that's okay. You stop chasing love that hurts, stop begging for apologies that won't come, stop explaining your pain to those who don't care. You start setting boundaries, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. You learn that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's survival. And the more you honor that peace, the more you grow into your true self. Pain also forces you to confront your own reflection. It makes you question who you were before the suffering began. You see the version of yourself that tolerated too much, forgave too easily, trusted too quickly, and realize that person no longer exists. The new you is wiser, less naive, more cautious but also more grounded. You don't need to explain your transformation to anyone because those who truly care will recognize it without words. You begin to value silence over confrontation, growth over revenge, peace over proving a point. The transformation reshapes your dreams too. The things you once thought mattered, status, approval, perfection, lose their grip on you. You start craving authenticity instead of attention, meaning instead of validation. You measure success not by what you have, but by how free you feel. Pain gives you a new compass, one that points toward healing, purpose, and truth. You start making choices that align with who you are becoming, not who you were forced to be. You stop living to please others and start living to honor yourself. Through the fire of pain, you also learn patience. You realize that growth can't be rushed, that some wounds heal slowly because they're meant to teach endurance. You stop comparing your journey to others because you understand that everyone's healing looks different. You find comfort in your own rhythm, trusting that even the setbacks are part of the process. Pain humbles you, reminding you that transformation is not about rising above suffering, it's about walking through it with grace. You stop resenting the past and start using it as fuel to build something better. There's a shift inside you when you start to see that pain didn't just happen to destroy you, it happened to reveal you. The person you are now would not exist without the storms you've endured. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every disappointment has shaped you into someone more grounded, more self-aware, more capable of love that doesn't demand your destruction. You begin to thank the pain, not because it was fair, but because it forced you to evolve. You start to recognize your own resilience as something sacred, something unshakable. Transformation through pain doesn't erase what happened, it rewrites your connection to it. You stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as a survivor. You stop asking why me, and start asking what now? You no longer crave revenge or validation because you've outgrown the need for it. Pain has refined you, carved away the un. When parents who once betrayed you begin to face their downfall, it doesn't happen in a single moment, it unfolds slowly, like the unraveling of a lie that can no longer hold its shape. The same people who once looked untouchable begin to show cracks in the walls they built around their pride. Their arrogance starts to fade, their voices lose power, and their decisions begin to turn against them. You watch from a distance, no longer the helpless child who once begged for love or understanding. The people who once held control over your life now find themselves at the mercy of consequences they never thought would come. Life has a way of bringing truth back around, not out of vengeance, but through balance. The same deceit and cruelty they used to climb higher become the very tools of their fall. It begins with small shifts. The people they trusted turn away. The friends who once praised them start to whisper behind their backs. The respect they once demanded becomes forced, hollow, fake. Their reputations begin to crumble under the weight of the truth they tried so hard to bury. Maybe it's financial loss, public humiliation, illness, or loneliness, whatever form it takes, it strips them of the power they once used to hurt others. You don't rejoice at first. You just watch, quietly, feeling a mixture of disbelief and distance. These are the same parents who once made you feel powerless, who told you that you would never survive without them. And now, it's them who struggle to stand without support. Their downfall often comes with silence, not chaos. It's not always dramatic or loud. Sometimes it's the quiet kind of loss, where they realize no one calls them anymore, where the people they manipulated no longer listen, where the house that was once full of noise becomes empty. They start to feel the same isolation they once forced upon you. The pride that made them blind now becomes their punishment. They look around for someone to blame, but this time there's no one left. As their downfall deepens, something shifts within you. You feel the urge to confront them, to ask them if they finally understand what they did to you. But when you look at them, the anger that once burned in you has changed. You see them not as monsters, but as people, flawed, broken, and drowning in the consequences of their own choices. Their power is gone, replaced by regret and confusion. They begin to reach out, not from love, but from desperation. The same parents who once turned you away now come knocking, their eyes filled with something they never showed before: fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being forgotten, fear of facing the silence they once gave you. They come to you seeking comfort, perhaps even forgiveness, because life has taken everything else from them. Their voices tremble when they speak your name, their pride barely holding together. They remind you of all they did for you, as if trying to rewrite the story. They talk about the past like it was never cruel, painting over the pain with selective memory. But you remember. You remember every moment they made you feel small, every night you cried alone, every time they made you doubt your worth. And now, standing before them, you realize how far you've come. You are no longer the same person who once needed their approval. Their regret is visible in their eyes, even when they try to hide it. They realize that time cannot be reversed, that the child they once hurt has grown into someone they no longer recognize. Their control over you has disappeared, replaced by a fragile dependence. They might apologize, but it's not the words that strike you, it's the way they look at you now, the way their voice shakes when they speak, the way they hesitate before reaching out. It's in those small details that you see the truth. Life has forced them to feel what they once made you feel. They are now the ones standing outside the door, waiting for someone to let them in. You remember how that door once separated you from them when you were the one pleading for love. You remember how cold it felt to be unwanted, how helpless you felt when they turned away. And now, the roles have reversed. They are the ones standing in the rain, waiting for your mercy. The irony of it all is almost too heavy to bear. You once wished for this moment, imagined it in your mind, thought it would bring satisfaction. But when it finally happens, it doesn't feel like victory, it feels like closure. Because revenge doesn't always come through action, sometimes it comes through realization. Watching them experience the same emptiness they gave you is its own kind of justice. Their downfall teaches you something about karma, about how life eventually demands balance. You see that power built on lies can only last so long. No matter how much they pretended, no matter how many people they deceived, the truth always finds its way through. And when it does, it doesn't just expose them, it humbles them. You see it in their gestures, their tone, their eyes. The same hands that once pushed you away now reach out, trembling, for your help. The same voices that once dismissed you now call your name with hesitation. Life has brought them full circle, not because you wanted revenge, but because what you give to the world always finds its way back. There's a strange stillness in watching their downfall. You don't feel joy, but you don't feel pity either. You simply observe the natural order taking place. The person who once believed they were invincible now stands vulnerable. The parent who once said they didn't need you now realizes how wrong they were. You see how loneliness has aged them, how guilt has softened their once harsh expressions. They try to explain themselves, to rewrite history with softer words, but no words can erase what's already been done. You listen, not because you owe them forgiveness, but because you finally understand that their downfall is not you. Even as they crumble, part of you wonders if they truly understand the pain they caused. Some part of them still clings to denial, to pride, to the illusion that they were right. You see it in the way they speak, half apology, half justification. But time has changed you. You no longer need their confession to heal. You no longer need them to validate your suffering. You've already built yourself back from the ruins they left. Their downfall doesn't complete you, it only confirms what you already knew, that people cannot escape the truth forever. Their regret becomes their prison. They start to see you differently, not as their child to control, but as a person who has risen beyond them. You no longer chase their approval, they chase your forgiveness. The balance has shifted. They finally face what they once refused to see, the pain of rejection, the weight of guilt, the emptiness of pride. You recognize it because you lived it. You see yourself reflected in their downfall, not as a victim, but as a survivor who no longer needs to prove anything. Their collapse becomes the mirror that shows you how far you've come, how much stronger you've become, how time has rewritten the power that once belonged only to them. And as you stand before them, watching the people who once hurt you beg for understanding, you realize that the cycle has ended. The pain they gave you has returned to its source, and life has evened the scales in its quiet, relentless way. When they finally came to your door, everything you had ever imagined about that moment collided with reality. You had pictured it many times, their faces, their words, the way they might look at you after all those years. But when it actually happened, it was nothing like you thought. The sound of their knock wasn't loud, It was hesitant, uncertain, almost fragile. It carried with it the weight of years filled with silence, distance, and unspoken pain. For a moment, you just stood there, staring at the door, your heart pound. You had changed. Time had shaped you into someone they wouldn't recognize. The person who once begged for their love no longer existed. You had learned to live without their approval, to build a life that didn't depend on their acceptance. You had grown from the ashes of their betrayal, and now they stood on the other side of that growth, seeking shelter in the home of the very person they once cast aside. Their voices trembled when they called your name, and you could hear the desperation they tried to hide. The power they once used to control you was gone. In its place was fear, fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear of finally facing the truth they had long avoided. When you opened the door, you saw faces aged not just by time, but by guilt. Their eyes searched yours for some trace of the child they once knew, but that child was gone. You stood tall, calm, and silent, while they stumbled over their words, trying to find the right way to begin. They spoke of forgiveness, of family, of mistakes made in the past. They tried to explain, to soften their cruelty with excuses about circumstances, pressure, and misunderstanding. But you could hear the cracks in their words. You could feel the insincerity that still lingered between each pause. They didn't come to admit their wrongs, they came because life had turned against them. Because they needed you. Because the world they once valued had finally abandoned them. It was almost surreal to see them standing there, unsure of themselves. These were the same people who once made you feel small, who once believed they could dictate your worth. Now, they stood humbled, stripped of that authority, unable to command anything from you. Their confidence had vanished, replaced by a pleading tone you never thought you'd hear. You watched them carefully, your emotions colliding between pity and pain. A part of you wanted to shut the door, to make them feel what you once felt. Another part of you wanted to listen, not for them. They spoke of their suffering, their losses, how life had been unkind. They told you about sleepless nights, about regrets that haunted them. You listened quietly, your face unreadable. They wanted your empathy, perhaps your help, maybe even your forgiveness. But every word they said carried a shadow of the past, a reminder of how they once ignored your cries, how they once dismissed your pain as weakness. They had chosen their pride over you, and now, they came to you because pride had nothing left to give them. Their voices trembled with the irony of fate, though they didn't seem to fully understand it. You noticed small details you never saw before. The way their hands shook when they reached out to you. The way their eyes avoided yours when the truth slipped too close to the surface. The silence between their sentences was louder than anything they said. It spoke of guilt, of shame, of a realization they were too afraid to name. You could see that they wanted forgiveness not because they understood the depth of their betrayal, but because they needed peace for themselves. They wanted to erase the past without truly facing it, to skip the part where accountability mattered. And as much as you wanted to believe they had changed, you knew that real remorse isn't built on desperation, it's built on understanding. The air between you was heavy, filled with everything left unsaid. You remembered how it felt to be on the other side of this silence, to be the one who begged, who cried, who reached out and got nothing but coldness in return. And now, here they were, in that same position, waiting for your response. Life had turned the tables completely. You held the power now, not to hurt them, but to decide whether or not to open the door of your heart. It wasn't revenge that filled you, it was clarity. You finally saw the full circle of what betrayal does, how it eventually finds its way back, how it leaves scars on everyone involved. They tried to remind you of family Beau. There was a strange quiet in their desperation. Their words faded, and they simply stood there, waiting. You could see the realization sinking in, that the person they once looked down upon had become everything they were not, self-sufficient, composed, unshaken. You had built your own world without them, and now, they wanted entry into it. The same door they had closed on you years ago now became their only hope of refuge. The irony hung thick in the air, but you didn't gloat or smile. You didn't need to. The moment itself spoke louder than any revenge could. You thought of the nights you cried, of the times you wished they'd come back to you with love and remorse. You used to imagine what you would say if they ever did. But now that they were here, the anger had long burned out. What remained was something quieter, stronger, dignity. You didn't need their validation anymore. Their begging didn't erase what happened, it only showed how the universe brings balance in its own time. They were not here to save you, they were here because they needed to be saved from themselves. As they stood before you, you noticed how small they looked, not physically, but in spirit. The power dynamic that once existed had dissolved completely. You didn't have to remind them of what they did, life had already done that for you. Their eyes told the story better than words ever could, the sleepless nights, the regret, the endless cycle of realizing too late what they had destroyed. The silence stretched on, long and uncomfortable, filled with memories that neither of you could escape. And in that silence, you understood that this moment wasn't about vengeance or even forgiveness, it was about truth. The truth that no matter how much they tried to bury the past, it had finally found them. The truth that love cannot be taken for granted, and betrayal leaves echoes that return when least expected. You didn't have to shout, didn't have to make them suffer, life had already done enough of that. They were standing in front of you as proof that time has a way of teaching lessons no words ever can. And though you could feel their eyes pleading for compassion, what you felt wasn't hatred, it was understanding of how far you had come, and how far they had fallen. You looked at them, remembering who they once were and what they had done, realizing that this encounter was not about punishment, but revelation. The people who once betrayed you now stood outside your door, not as your parents, but as strangers seeking mercy from the very person they had broken. The circle was complete, not with fury, but with the quiet power of survival, of transformation, of knowing that you no longer needed them to complete your story.